Kingdoms rise and empires crumble, and the knowledge and wisdom of past ages are lost to the foggy ruins of time. But for genuine seekers of truth, one place stands alone on a hill, shining brightly in the darkness. You, dear viewer, have reached the Hidden Citadel.
Hey, welcome to another exciting episode of Monkey Investigates. Let's check the monkey cam and see. Oh, there is no monkey today. Hang on, I think I know how to get monkey. Monkey, would you like a treat? Would you like a treat, monkey? I don't know. I think monkey's sleeping. Oh, nope, wait, here he comes. There's our intrepid co-host. Would you like a treat today? Here you go. So, today we're going to go back over one of our old classic episodes about Nimrod. This is from the Hidden Citadel archive collection called Nimrod, From Tyrant to Giant / God King. And I'm going to pick it up here where we're talking about our old book, T.O.B., which you can get at Amazon or Barnes & Noble if you're interested in it. It's a psychological thriller, political thriller, sci-fi thriller. It's got all of it in there. And so here we're talking about it and how that led us into this lifelong study of Nimrod. In this book, we kind of riff off of C.S. Lewis's idea that he started in the dark, I think it was called the Dark Tower, which was supposed to be the fourth out of the Silent Planet book, the fourth ransom book, that he died and he didn't get to finish. And there's this one scene where this guy with a stinger in his head is stinging people. And we were like, dude, what if that was Nimrod and it was his crown? And so that became kind of the gist, the MacGuffin of the book.
Yep.
Here's the thing. In our research, and I don't remember how we came to the conclusion, but we basically equated Nimrod with Enmerkar, which was a great ancient Sumerian king. And I found, did I send you this guy, Let Us Reason, and his videos?
I think so.
Dude, this guy, I'm sad that he's a pre-tribber, but other than that, this guy is amazing about what the research that he did. And I was like, dude, I was convinced. I went to check his videos before this, and I think he's taken his Nimrod videos down. I don't really know why, because they were really, really good work. But anyway, we preserve most of what he talks about in those videos. Nimrod was Enmerkar 20 years ago, but this guy went through and just gave me even way more things to think about and connect Nimrod to Enmerkar. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the building of the Tower of Babel and all these other monuments that were found around the world. We're going to, and we're going to talk about Nimrod's wife, who some call Semiramis. We're going to get into, and the building of all the fake religions and everything that came, false religions that came out of that. And we might even address a little bit of Gary Wayne's madness and his hatred towards Tolkien and Lewis. A little bit.
We have a large
because
mountain
today,
to cover.
Because today I published. So yesterday I sat and I listened while I was working to probably 6 hours of Gary Wayne. I just put it on in the background and got to work. And one of the things that drove me nuts, I really like Gary Wayne. There's a couple things that I slightly disagree with on. I think that Gary Wayne does a little bit of mixing up, like conflation of some things.
Yeah.
But not too bad. But I really don't agree with him on his idea of soul sleep, and he really fleshed that out with Taylor Welsh. On a previous episode, we talked about something that that I thought he was referring to when he mentioned soul sleep, but on this most recent episode with Taylor Welsh, he explained it more, and I was like, oh no, he's totally off base, because he's not taking... And in the same conversation that he explained soul sleep, he turns around and he talks about the martyred people who are complaining to Jesus at the throne, and I'm like, wait a minute, if they're sleeping, then they couldn't have been complaining to Jesus around the throne. So it's like his whole argument about that falls apart, and he doesn't seem to get the thing. Well, Taylor asked him about C.S. Lewis, and he was like, but what do you say about the screw tape letters, and what do you say about this and about that? And his comment was, well, they never repent. If they ever did become Christians, they never repented of their Rosicrucian connections. So I published an article today there, and you can go check it out at WordPress for, what is our blog? Hang on. You can go to the Hidden Citadel 4 at WordPress.com, and you can read the article. There is no connection at all with Lewis and Tolkien ever having been a part of the Rosicrucians.
I don't get that either.
And if you read Charles Williams' book, The Greater Trumps, in the very intro, he talks about how Lewis and Tolkien converted him to Christianity and how they worked on him for years. And then, I mean, just look at Monkey. Monkey is obviously upset about these wrong accusations against C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. He is agitated right now because he doesn't like that. Finally, he turned his life around and started following Christ. And it's like, so the very guy that Gary Wayne points to connect Tolkien and Lewis, and what drives me nuts is he always says the Inkling Society, and the Inkling Society is a hidden arm of the Rosicrucians, and it's like, no, it wasn't. It was like their D&D group. You know, it's like it was not a society. They didn't even call it the Inkling Society. It was just the Inklings, and it was just the guys that met for a pint at the pub on a Friday night. You know,
the interesting thing is, what bothers me here is when you try to investigate the intentions of something based on what you assume, presume, or discriminate as someone's psychology, but you ignore their fruit, then you're eliminated from the science of psychology, because it's the science of psychology is very much like the biblical model, which is you can only measure something by what it does, what it consistently produces. So you look at the works, the devotion, how about the values of Tolkien and Lewis. Lewis has some of the greatest Christian quotes you could possibly have from a Christian author.
Christian today because of C.S. Lewis.
So you're looking at
mere Christianity changed my life.
But so you have that. You have like screw tape letters and Christianity just going across. Like you look at like Lee Strobel or what's his name, the other guy, and it's like not McDonald, something like that. It's he was that attorney. McDowell, Josh McDowell. Like you have those guys, and you have like, all right, and you're like, no, despite them having consistent fruit, I know that they're
well. And the thing is, it's like a lot of so this is what happened. I didn't write about this in the article, but I should have. In the 80s, there was a big move to kind of discredit C.S. Lewis based on the fact that the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe had a witch in it. And magic and stuff like that, and so there were some. But the same people that were against that were also against Star Wars and were against. Oh, you mean the Endor in the Bible? Yeah. There's a witch in the Bible.
Yeah.
Anyway,
several.
But the point was there was a group of people that went around and they were basically saying this is bad fantasy. Hank Hanegraaff, as weird as he kind of got later on, did an excellent job back in the 90s setting up the difference between bad fantasy and good fantasy. And I'm sure in the CRI archives you can go and listen to all of that stuff from back then. Here's the thing. C.S. Lewis, I want to address a couple things. The eucatastrophe that Lewis and that Tolkien talked about is this idea, and Gary connects it to myth, and it's the idea that in mythology there's a happy ending. And both Lewis and Tolkien said that they believed that God allowed that to live in mythology so that those cultures would recognize the gospel when it was presented to them, and then they would convert to Christianity. That's the whole point of this eucatastrophe thing. And it's like, the problem is, anybody that's a Lewis scholar or a Tolkien scholar would tear Gary Wayne apart in 5 minutes if they just sat down and talked. But what got me is Taylor Welch and his buddy were just sitting there drooling over what a genius Gary is, and it's like, Gary's not an idiot, but he's so far off on this that it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's just, it needed to be addressed.
And it really bothers me because on there's two accounts, and you know, it's really the parable principle here, that they are using a different kind of story in order to depict very biblical ideas. And you know, their fantasy is really, you can see the intention is to God, like, and to Christ. That's it. So, but the thing that I think is just psychologically, how Gollum becomes Gollum, and how that's so detailed in what starts with an inkling that no pun intended, an inclination. What starts with an inclination, and it turns into relative deprivation, which turns into like Cain and Abel murder.
That's exactly how sin works.
And then makes it so he's almost immortally established because of sin. Like, he's constantly in torment. Gollum is, because of this
like
thing.
Addiction.
Like
it's a total
exactly.
picture of
There's addiction. There's paranoia. It's almost a schizophrenia of sorts. Not because there's dual, because that's not what schizophrenia is.
Right.
But it is the way he's hearing voices. There's other factors getting him to do other things. So you have that. But then you had Edmund in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah. With the Turkish delight.
Same story.
It is, and it's very much
something very simple caused him to betray his friends,
and it became something that was offered to him by something that was supernatural, and he took it and then betrayed the fellowship. Betrayed the fellowship.
The fellowship.
That is, I mean, you look at that. You look at it's similar. They're both extensions of the Eden experience, Eden episode.
Well, and the other thing, too, is I want to address another thing. Gary Wayne talked about how Lewis's name traces back to the Welsh Llewellyn. It doesn't. Llewellyn is a Welsh name, and they're a Welsh royal family. C.S. Lewis was Irish, and it goes back to Llw, well, I think it does, which is the Irish name that is not related. Even though they're similar, they're not related.
Yeah.
The other thing about Tolkien and Lewis both being these from wealthy upper crust, you know, I'm talking there about Llw Silverhand, which was one of the Irish Tuatha De Danann that came over, and some people say that there is a connection between Llw Silverhand and Llewellyn, and then other people that I've read say that there's not. I have checked into this, so it's kind of like he's leaning on that there is a connection, but that's also, I just looked it up last night. There's a connection between Llw Silverhand and the tribe of Dan from the Bible. So it's kind of like, I'm still not with Gary on this. Tolkien was an orphan. He didn't even know who his parents were, and he was raised by a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
And the reason he got into Oxford was because the priest had to talk and show, look, this kid's really smart, and you should give him an opportunity, and so they let him in. And he spent his entire life as a teacher, you know? And then same thing with Lewis. It was like almost... The reason he was at Oxford was because they had something kind of like the GI Bill after World War I, and he was able to test in and be but neither one of them came from wealthy backgrounds or families. And in fact, Lewis's grandfather was the Irish version of the Anglicans, a pastor. It was like he came from a Christian background, even though he rejected it early. And so what they do is they take quotes from Tolkien, or not Tolkien, but from Lewis, before he was a Christian, when he was an atheist.
Yeah.
And then they bring those back up and they use them against him. And it's like, dude, if people talked about some of the stupid things I said before God got a hold of me, I'd hate to have that thrown back in my face. You know?
That, yeah, it absolutely makes no sense.
Now, why did we bring this up? Because it actually does have some bearing on what we're talking about.
Yes.
The mythologies of the world, you can pretty much date them all back to, I don't want to say a trinity, but we're just going to use that because there's no better word. But there's a trinity concept that pervades every culture of the world.
Mm-hmm.
In Christianity, it's different. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But in the rest of every mythology and every religion on earth, including the New Age stuff, there is this concept of the Father, the Mother, and the child.
Right.
Okay? And that traces all the way back to one person that came after the flood, and that was Nimrod.
Yeah.
And Nimrod's wife, some people call her Semiramis. There were actually a couple different Semiramises that were in history, but the Nimrod version of Semiramis is older, and that may or may not have actually been her name. Enmerkar's wife was called Enmerkar Z, which basically means Enmerkar's wife. So they didn't even name her.
Sounds like a Mazda, Enmerkar Z.
Yeah, right. Well, Mazda is interesting too, because Mazda is one of the chariot of the gods in Zoroastrianism, and Zoroastrianism is directly related to what we're talking about today too.
Oh.
And if you want to, you can learn a lot more about Zoroastrianism by going and getting my new book, Sacred Fire, available at Amazon or wherever books are sold. That's kind of a tangent. So interesting that you said that. But here's the thing with but I think Enmerkar's wife was probably named Inanna. And that's because the very first mother goddess that is mentioned is Inanna, and so he basically elevated himself and his wife to be gods and wanted people to worship them. Mm-hmm. And then they started building the Tower of Babel. And I wanted to show you this guy. This guy's website is called Let Us Reason, and if this is a little too small for you to see, you can, in the link below, go check out the full video of this. I'm not giving you the full thing right now, but it's a lot easier to see on the old channel, the Hidden Citadel Archive Collection, and you can check that out. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of this in just a second.
Mysteries abound in this world. Who built the Great Pyramid or the Tower of Babel? Did Noah's flood interact with the timeline of the dinosaurs? If you are a fan of paranormal investigations, fringe history, and the downright mysterious, then the Hidden Citadel is the community for you. What is the Hidden Citadel? Every week, theologian Willy Minnix, psychologist Greg Kemp dive into biblical mysteries and unexplained phenomena that your Sunday school teacher was too afraid to tackle. We explore if Bigfoot is an interdimensional entity, a fairy, a djinn, or a gray-style extraterrestrial encounter, or perhaps elemental spirits serving the watchers, finishing the job the Nephilim started. From the megalithic ruins of Namdal and Pumapunku to the ancient engineering of Tiwanaku and Gobekli Tepe, we treat these archaeological enigmas as our home base. If you are brave, curious, and have an open mind for esoteric research, welcome to the Citadel. If you want to support our deep dives, check out the links to our exclusive gear below.
Hey, if you like that song, that was the title track from the album Journey to Mars by the band The Fantastic Flying Frogs. And you can check out links to their music below as well. Anyway, back to Nimrod. Talks about these points of similarity. Greg can't see this, but I'll read it off for those of you who can see it. Mm-hmm. The points of similarity is both. Well, first of all, I guess I got to show you the time. Oh, that's not it. That's the time of when. If you go by the Septuagint dates, you will see that if you go by the Masoretic text, they basically put the flood at about 2300 BC or 2350 BC, the building of the Tower of Babel at 2200 BC, the building of the pyramid is sometime before, apparently, the tower, but I think the pyramid was built way before that, but some of the modern people will put it there. But when you go by the dating that's actually in the Septuagint, it pushes it back. And so it basically makes the Tower of Babel happen at 3100 BC and the flood at about 3400 BC, which they say between 4000 and 3100 BC, somewhere in there, is when the Uruk period of Babylon started. Which is like the non-mythical Babylonian part of the empire. Mm-hmm. And so basically what happens is we have... okay, we're going to pause it for a second. All right, so... And if you want to check out the connection between the flood and the Younger Dryas, I highly recommend checking out our Gobekli Tepe video. Basically, if we go by the Septuagint dates, then Enmerkar and Nimrod, they line up. So they both lived in the 3000s BC during the Uruk period after the Great Flood. They both built cities in Shinar or Sumer after the flood. They were both Sumerian kings credited with building Erech or Uruk. They both rebelled against God. They both introduced pagan worship of false gods, number one, himself and his wife and his kid. They built massive buildings. So the Tower of Babel and the Eridu Ziggurat, or the Enki temple complex, basically was the Tower of Babel. They used the same construction techniques. They baked mud brick with bitumen. And here's the thing. Nobody else did this before them. And the Bible points out that, yeah, they're kind of the first, or Nimrod's time when they were building the tower was the first time that type of construction was used.
We'll come back to that, too.
Yeah, both of their building sites were abruptly abandoned. And nobody knows why they stopped. Both were credited with or lived contemporaneously with the invention of writing. So before them, there was no writing. But after them, there was writing, and the question is, well, why did they need writing? Okay?
To understand
languages. Yeah.
Right.
Both are renowned as being hunters. So here's what the word Enmerkar means. Enmer is a name, and Kar means hunter. So both languages... Yeah, both. Check this out. You're going to love this. If you take the D off of Nimrod, okay, and you read it in Hebrew, it's spelled NMR because there are no vowels in Hebrew. If you take the vowels out of Enmerkar and take the car off because that means the hunter, then you get NMR. So what the Bible did is they took Enmer, which was his name, added a D in Nimrod, and basically made the rebel out of Enmerkar rather than Enmer the hunter. And so it's such a slam dunk. And some people like to say Sargon was in Nimrod, but Sargon lived in a completely different time period. There's no way he could have been Nimrod. The other thing too is Enmerkar had a wife that he deified. So did Nimrod. They had a son that they deified. And so around the world, you have Osiris and Isis and their son Horus in Egypt. You have Aphrodite. You have Ashtaroth. You have all these female goddesses are connected to Astarte. They're all connected to her. Orion, like I said, Osiris, Baal. A lot of these different gods are connected to Nimrod. Yeah. Okay? And now the last little beautiful thing is he connects, I don't know if you got to see this video, but he connects the Scorpion King, King Scorpion, with Nimrod too. Wow. So after the Tower of Babel, Sumerians went and invaded into Egypt. And the funny thing was, too, Nimrod's father was Cush. And Cush is said to have gone and left the Mesopotamian area and settled Cush, okay? Yeah. Well, Enmerkar's father also left and basically went to somewhere overseas and settled a nation. Well, after they were kicked out of the Tower of Babel incident, guess where Nimrod goes? Goes right to where Cush was at, and then he takes over Egypt, and he basically builds the what became the Egyptian empire. And they know that King Scorpion was the first pharaoh, basically, of Egypt to unite the upper and lower Egypt. And, and so it's like, and we're going to come back to that in the next video and watch some more of that. But also, over on our blog, which is hiddencitadel4.wordpress.com, I continued this investigation, and what I found out was, my thinking was, if the Tower of Babel was a real event and everybody spread out from there, then there should be other great building leaders in the legends, myths, or histories that have some sort of K, NMR, or NMRK, or, some variant on it. And what I found out was, all the way into India, even into the original, oldest recorded versions of the name for Krishna, all the way up into Russia and over into Africa and up into the European places, we see little traces of Enmerkar and his name being carried over into the mythologies of other people, where there's somebody who is some sort of a builder that has a name that when you get it back to its oldest version, it has those letters in there. And so you can go read those articles over at our blog at hiddencitadel4.wordpress.com. And we will pick this up next time. So until next time, stay in the Citadel, because, can you say it, Monkey? I don't think he's going to say it. Night is coming.
The watchman replies, morning is coming, but night will soon return.